Chapter 1 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Larry Wilson. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 1 As Pilgrims Go to Rome. In the same way that the poets have loved Rome and made their pilgrimages there, as good Moslems travel toward Mecca, so there are some of us who have come to San Francisco. Then when we arrive and find it all that we have dreamed, our love for it becomes its highest tribute. And I don't know why it is sacrilege to mention Rome and San Francisco in the same breath. As for me, I greatly prefer San Francisco, although I have never been to Rome. I love San Francisco for its youth. Other cities have become set and hard, and have succumbed to the cruel symmetry of the machine age. But not San Francisco. It is still youth untamed. They may try, but they cannot manicure it, nor groom it, nor dress it up in a stiff white collar, nor fetter it by not allowing a body to stretch out on the grass in Union Square, or prohibiting street fakers and light wines served in coffee pots, and doing away with wild dashing jitneys. Then there is something about San Francisco's way of being out here from everyone else, a city all alone. New York is 5 hours from Boston. Philadelphia is close between New York and Washington. Baltimore is a trolley ride away. Chicago is only overnight from all the other cities, while Atlanta is only 2 sleeping car nights from her sister cities. But San Francisco, out here as far as it can reach with one foot in the great Pacific, nearly a week from New York, and a month away from China. Some people wouldn't like it, but something vagabondish in me rejoices to have run away from them all. Especially at night, when the fog comes in on the city, and shuts out even Oakland, and fog horns out of the Golden Gate call mournfully, and boats in the bay go calling their lookout calls. I get this feeling of far-offness from the rest of the world that is very gratifying. And I love the sound of San Francisco, the sound of its singing. Some cities roar and others hum, but San Francisco sings. And I love the look of it and the feel of it. I love to stand on its hills in the mornings when the Bride Veil fog is going out to sea, and the smoke and steam and fog and sunshine make one grand symphonic morning song. And I love to stand on high hills on clear days, when all her cubist houses stand bold in the sunlight, and the cities across the bay are so close to the touch. And I love its color, flowers and girls and splashes of the Oriental. And I love its bohemia, which is not affected, but real. I love it because it is young and live, and spontaneous and humorous, and beauty-loving, and unashamed of anything that is life. Oh, I don't know. If I were in New York and it should begin to suffocate me, I would run and run across the continent and never stop once until I landed on the top of Telegraph Hill. End of chapter 1. Chapter 2 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Larry Wilson. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 2 At the Ferry. The shrill of newsboys, the bass of older vendors, the call of taxis, trolleys that proceed all day in ordered sequence, the wide swing of traffic on the Embarcadero, a tang of salt in the air, the atmosphere of flowers for sale, hoarse call of ferries in the bay like politicians who have spoken too much in the open air and lost their voices, the beautifully ordered hurry and bustle and expectancy of people on their way somewhere, and over it all the mentor of the police. Help pass the time pleasantly. So does the electric piano coax away our nickels. To those who know music it is a horrible sound, but to the rest of us its tunes are rather gay. On the wall a defunct comedy flashes. Hypnotized but never amused, we gaze at it as we wait for the great doors to swing back. A woman is thrown from an auto by her husband, and in her fall displays a pair of husky, ruffled underwear. Time was when that would have raised a howl of joy, but no longer. She hardly touches the ground when we find ourselves gazing at an orchard of California figs. Zip, the woman, picks herself up, gazes comically at the audience for a laugh, and receiving none, hops with phenomenal agility up astride of the hood of the auto. Piff, a yard of Santa Rosa hens. Ping, the husband throws his wife up to the roof of a skyscraper, and commuters gaze solemnly. Biff, a scene from Santa Clara. Clang, the gates are opened. On the Sausalito side, a jammed together happy vacation crowd, grotesquely varied and elaborately gotten up hikers, bags and suitcases to fall all over everywhere, professorish looking men off, taking a book along, people laden with all the cheap magazines in the market, smartly dressed people on their way to country homes in Marin and Sonoma, a well modulated, nicely groomed crowd. Bing! The doors slide back and everybody rushes off for a holiday. Commuters and tourists. Most of the time I'd rather be a tourist. They are easily distinguished in the crowd. An accent from Louisiana, a woman who has just returned from the Orient, a man with continental manners. They are easily distinguished, and the predatory red-capped porters know them well. We are wistfully sorry to be going only to Oakland. We long to go out on the main line, the out-leading, mile-wandering, venturesome main line. Reluctantly we turn to where duty and necessity calls us ignominiously to the electric Suburban. The first sight of San Francisco. Ah, this is San Francisco. The shrill of newsboys, the bass of old vendors, the flash of electric signs. Do you prefer Camels, Chesterfields, or Fatimas? The call of taxis, invitations to hotel buses, the wide sweep of traffic on the Embarcadero. So this is San Francisco. End of chapter 2.
Chapter 3 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by S.K. Edison, New Jersey. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 3. The Union Street Car. It is surprising how many people patronize the shabby little thing. But then it waits right where those who leave the ferry might see it first, as though it were the most important car in town. And I have a fancy the big cars humor it a bit and give it first place. Besides, it goes anywhere in the city. Chinatown, the Hall of Justice, the Chamber of Commerce, the Barbary Coast, St. Francis Church. Sinners, saints, and merchants may travel its way. Portsmouth Square, Telegraph Hill, Little Italy, Russian Hill, Automobile Row, Fillmore Street, the Presidio, and I expect with a little coaxing it would switch about and run over to the Mission. It has actually been known on stormy nights to take its constituents up the side streets to their very doors. It is a surprising little boat, which looks like nothing more than a bug crawling up the backs of the hills with its antenna of khaki-wound legs sticking out fore and aft. Those who have traveled in Ireland tell us that it is much like the jaunting cars, and it is not unlike the two-mobile trolley. One night I set out to find the little thing to take me home. I was in a strange part of the city, and when my friends told me to get on and get off and get on again, I did as I was told. With blind faith, I told the conductors to put me off, and they did. I continued in this way until long after midnight, when I found myself at a lonely corner with no one in sight. I waited and waited, and was getting nervous when I spied a blue uniform. I looked sharply to see if he were a motorman, a fireman, or an officer from the Presidio. I am careful about these matters since last summer, when I was coming north on the President and asked a naval officer for some ice water. I rushed up to him and told him, which is true, that it was the first time I had ever seen a policeman when I wanted one. This led him into a defense of the San Francisco police, which I told him was quite unnecessary with me, for I thought them the finest policemen in the world, probably because they are so Irish. "Irish?" said he with a twinkle. "I'm not Irish." We chatted a while until the Union Street car came along, and then that policeman who said he was an Irish leaned over and whispered confidentially, "If you miss this car, there'll be another. I suppose they get lonesome." You see how I am wandering away from my subject? That is because I followed the Union Street car. It switches from subject to subject just like that. It begins with the wonderful retail markets of San Francisco, and then changes abruptly to all sorts of sociological problems. Then, before we know, it gives us a beautiful marine view, and then drops us down where the proletariat lives, then up to the homes of the rich and mighty, and ends in the military. Everyone should sightsee by the little Union Street car. End of chapter 3. Chapter 4 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by S.K. Edison, New Jersey. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 4. The Latin Meets the Oriental. In that spot where Chinatown merges into the Latin Quarter, there must be, I think, a director of delightful situations who holds dominion there. For instance, can you imagine anything more subtle than a group of large fat women haranguing in Italian-American a poor thin Chinaman over some bargains in vegetables? In a place which marks the line of cleavage between the two quarters is a picture store containing in its window religious pictures, enlarged family photographs of Filipinos, and, of course, views of the Point Lobos cypress. There is something very appealing about that window. Pictures of Jesus, no matter how lurid they are, never fall short of dignity. And it seems not at all incongruous that he should be there in the midst of all those strange human contacts. There are not only contacts between the Latin and the Oriental, but anything unusual may come to light in that particular neighborhood. A buff cochin rooster was wandering about the street the other day, stepping high and picking up choice tidbits and showing off before his harem of hens who peeked at him from their boxes. He strutted about exactly as though he had been in his own Petaluma barnyard. One day I saw an enormous Negro running through the streets with a piece of new green felt bound round his stomach. Now, why should a huge Negro run through the street with a piece of new green felt around his stomach? No one knows. And another time, a small Chinese maiden bumped into me because she was so absorbed in that great American institution, the funny sheet. On one of those side streets, in there somewhere, one of those streets untoured by tourists, I saw some Chinese boys dressed in American boss-of-the-road uniforms, playing baseball and calling the call of Babe Ruth in sing-song Chinese. Then near them was an empty lot, and what do you suppose it was filled with? Scotch thistles and edged with wild cornflowers. Even nature enters into the fun. There is a story of an Italian who went through the street somewhere on Leavenworth calling, "Nicer, fresher flowers." And from the opposite side of the street a Chinaman with flowers would call, "Say me over here." All went well until the Chinaman began to outsell the other when the Italian remonstrated. "Yella for yourself, eh?" he said, to which the Chinaman answered, "Go to helly," and went on as before. This story was told to me by very reliable eyewitnesses, the buff cochin rooster and the huge Negro and all the others I saw myself, and many other strange things which I have not room to write I saw in that spot where Chinatown merges into the Latin Quarter. End of chapter 4.
Chapter 5 of Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5. The Pepper and Salt Man. He was a man, I should say about 60 years old, a most uninteresting age, and a homely, weather-beaten fellow too, when you stopped to look at him. His suit was pepper and salt, and he was just like his suit, good as gold, I have no doubt. A roomer of whom his landlady would say, "He comes and he goes and is never a speck of trouble." Still, he might have been as good as St. Anthony, but no one would ever have noticed him except for what happened. What happened wasn't so much either, but it was enough to illuminate that dun, commonplace man, so that everyone in the side-seating trolley was suddenly aware of his presence. What happened was, 10 months old, and was a girl. A regular girl. 100% feminine, one could tell, just by the way she wore her clothes, by her daintiness, by the tilt of her bonnet, and by the way she smiled out from under it. I can't describe a baby girl any more than I describe a sunset or a moonlight or any of the wonders of God. I can only say that she was everything that a baby girl should have been. When she entered with her mother, we all edged and crowded over, but the pepper and salt man won. Down she sat close beside him. Then you should have seen that man, the foolish old fellow. He turned toward her, he beamed, he mentally devoured her. He never took his eyes off of her long enough to wink. When she seemed about to turn her restlessly bobbing head towards him, his hands moved and the strong muscles of his face worked in excitement. Then, when she smiled his way, and for an instant there was a flash of tiny milk teeth, that man, the old silly, made the most dreadful facial contortion, something between a wink, a smile, a boo, and a grimace. Then, when she turned from him, he sat there eating her up. I saw him look reverently at her exquisite hands and at the awkward little legs sticking out straight ahead. When her mother arranged her ruffles he watched every move, absorbed. Then he would wait eager, hoping and praying for her to smile his way again. Why, I was waiting for her to smile too, and so was every one of the staid and grown-up people in the car. I don't know when we would ever have come out from the spell of that 10-months-old baby girl, if just then the conductor had not called out reproachfully, "Central Avenue! Central Avenue!" Then the pepper and salt man jumped and looked nervously out and rushed for the door. I myself had to walk back 2 blocks, and when I turned at my corner, he was still going back to his street. End of chapter 5. The Pepper and Salt Man.
Chapter 6 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Michael Fazio. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 6. The Bay on Sunday Morning. Perhaps to go to Fort Mason on a sunny Sunday morning, that beautiful relaxed moment of the whole week, and there to sit with others who have no autos to go gallivanting in, and to sit idly gazing off at the bay. That's not bad. To read a little and doze a bit, but mostly to gaze out to sea and dream. A big foreign steamer in port, perhaps a Scandinavian boat, inert, enormous, helpless, while the little tugs chatter around it and finally get hold of it and tug it slowly around with its nose pointing out to sea. Lumber schooners come in slowly and rhythmically, long and low and clean. The Vallejo boat, looking like a rocking horse, goes importantly chugging off toward Mare Island. It's hard to read a book with so going on out there. Sunday morning. Blessed playtime. There's a fellow in a green canoe, and the muscles of his body play into the movement of the waves until he and his green canoe and the white-capped waves are all one motif of the whole symphony. Men play around the yacht club like a lot of schoolboys, and now, shoot, they push a long slim racer into the water. Dainty white yachts go dipping to the waves and seem like lovely young girls in among the sturdier boats. Now the fishermen come in from their night's work, making music all in an orderly procession, and every boat of them a brilliant blue inside. I'd like to catch a Maine fisherman allowing color in his boat, like a Dago or a Wop. Over all the swing and dip and rhythm of the seagulls. How beautifully they accent the movement of the symphony, like the baton of some great leader, this great, beautiful Sunday morning symphony. Then there is Alcatraz. Oh, Alcatraz, why should they have placed a prison there as a monument to men's failure to order their lives in harmony with nature? Alcatraz, most beautiful island in the most beautiful bay, you sound an ugly, sinister, most unhappy undertone in the morning's symphony. Still, it is a symphony of San Francisco Bay. Why shouldn't the composers put it into music? We're sick of the song of the huntsman by the brasses, the strings, and the wood instruments. With Whitman we exclaim, "Come, Muse, migrate from Ionia, and come out here to the west, and conserve the symphony of the bay which is already composed and waiting." And for the argument, the overture, the prelude, there could be a sailing schooner with sails all set coming into the Golden Gate, in the full brilliant sunlight, or mysteriously through a fog, or against a sunset sky. It should be full and by, like that beautiful painting by Coulter in the Stock Exchange of the Merchants Building. Symphony of San Francisco Bay, boom of foghorns, calls and answers of the ferries, chug of the fishermen's boats, twink of lights in the harbor at night, rhythm of seagulls, and the brooding fog to soften it all. Come, Muse, migrate from Ionia. End of chapter 6.
Chapter 7 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by S.K. Edison, New Jersey. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 7. Safe on the Sidewalk. Are there others, I wonder, who feel as I do about crossing the street? There must be. Now, when I cross, say, Market Street at 3rd, I run. I take my life and my bundles in my hand and run, darting swift glances to the left and to the right. It looks hick. I know it looks hick, and I care, but I prefer to be alive and countrified than sophisticated in an ambulance, and so I run. At corners, too. I think corners are worse, for there the machines may turn around and chase me, which they often do. It's a horrible feeling. There must be others who feel as I do about crossing the street, but they never betray it. I watch to see, and when they just cross, that's all. Not with nonchalance, exactly, but with ease and assurance. Once I actually saw a man, a native son, I'm sure, roll a cigarette as he crossed at a point where even the traffic cop looked nervous. No one ever gets killed or even injured, but always everybody is getting almost killed and almost injured. They like it. It's a sort of sport. I've noticed it more since the city has gone dry. The game is, if you're walking, to see how close to a machine you can come and not hit it. Streetcars, machines, and people all go straight ahead, and they all come out right. It is the only city where it's done with such abandon. They never stop for anything except taxis, not even fire engines. The secret of it is, I think, that no one ever hesitates. This is understood by all San Franciscans, that no one is ever going to hesitate. That's why there are no accidents. It's the unexpected in people that makes disasters and creates a demand for traffic cops. I try to cross the street as others cross. I choose a chalk mark and, pretending I'm a native daughter, launch out. I get on fine. Suddenly a monster machine is on me, or would be if I did not jump back. I shouldn't have jumped back, it seems. But how was I to know? In the jaws of death, you don't reason, you jump. In jumping back, I hit another machine and it stops. And that stops a streetcar, that stops something else, and in a minute Market Street, the famous Market Street, is all balled up because I jumped back. Drivers, red in face, swear at me, not because they are cross, but scared, more scared than I. Next time, I'm more careful. I look to the traffic cop for attention, but being a handsome man, he thinks I'm trying to flirt. Policemen should be homely. So I wait until the street is entirely empty. I wait a long time. It is empty. I run like a steer. and suddenly, out of nowhere, a machine is yelling at me individually, and I know no more until, breathless and red, I reach the haven of the sidewalk. Once I heard a horrible story of a man who lost control of his machine and ran up onto the sidewalk. End of chapter 7.
Chapter 8 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Nemo. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 8. Port of Missing Men. They say that San Francisco is known all over as the Port of Missing Men. That is a city where a man may lose himself if he chooses, and that by the same token it is a good place to look for my wandering boy tonight. I can believe all this, especially on 3rd Street. 3rd Street should be called by some other name, or it should have a nickname. If it were in Seattle, it would be known as Skid Row. 3rd Street doesn't describe it at all. When I see a lot of men like that, wanderers, family men out of work, vagabonds, nobodies, somebodies, rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief, doctor, lawyer, merchant, chief, I always get to thinking how once each one was a tiny baby in a thin white dress, and how before that each one of them was born of a woman. If I could ever forget that, I could perhaps sometimes call men a lot of cattle. Come to think of it, it is men who call other men cattle. At any rate, I like to think that no woman would ever see men as less than the sons of mothers. The Port of Missing Men is like the Port of San Francisco, and these men are like boats in from a foreign port. Tramp steamers, some of them, out of nowhere, going nowhere. No baggage, no traditions. Men who'll never get lost because they are on their way to nowhere. Yet the majority of these men are going to some place, but where I do not know. What do they talk about in groups down there? Tall, young fellows, and strong middle-aged men, and reminiscent old ones down in the Port of Missing Men? If they're out of work, where do they sleep at night? And what do they have to eat? And have they any women folks? Not all kinds of men are down there, but many kinds. There are Mexicans, Sinn Feiners, old American stock, and once in a while a venturesome Yankee. There are lumberjacks in from the north, and Chinamen in shuffling slippers, and philosophers and Swedes, half-breeds and just plain men. Some are vagabonds who can't help their roving, and others are very tired and would like to lie over in a port for a long spell. There are Italians and Portuguese, and many Greeks, and turbaned Hindus, tall and skinny, always traveling in pairs like nuns. Sometimes the port is fairly crowded. New England is a section of the country where men leave home, and I have heard mothers sing with tears in their voices, "Oh, where is my wandering boy tonight?" On 3rd Street, down at the Port of Missing Men, I have a fancy that I would like to write back to all those mothers that here are their boys. But after all, what good would that do? For who can tell which is which? End of chapter 8. Chapter 9 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Nemo. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 9. Market Street Scintillations. Oh, the things our eyes discover as we walk along on Market Street. Such a medley. Infinite, incongruous, comical, pathetic, motley, and sublime. Harding in a window with pure buttermilk. He'll be in more difficult situations before he is done, I'm thinking. An electric fan above him keeps the buttermilk pure, and flies the American flag in crepe paper. Crabs to take home. They are freshly cooked, very large, and 40 cents apiece. I decide that some day I shall really buy one and take it home when I am confronted with the fact that all hair goods must be sold. Why, I wonder, why must they be sold? And here are eggs any style, so close to the hair goods that I immediately visualize them as marcelled style and pompadoured. Shoes drastically reduced. It is the truth. The Oxfords I wear are reduced by a drastic $5. Well, I couldn't go barefooted. I comfort myself and hurry on. A shooting gallery, and a man standing there trying to make up his mind to try it. A second's glimpse of him and all that he is revealed. One knows immediately that his favorite song is "My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean," and that his ideal man is Governor Allen, and that he is on his way to spend his remaining days with his sister Lottie in Los Angeles. Who would eat stewed tripe Spanish? Someone must, or they wouldn't advertise it on the outside of the restaurant. Well, it takes all sorts of people to make a world. Probably the man who would order stewed tripe Spanish wouldn't touch an alligator pear salad. To him, alligator pears taste exactly like lard. To the person who wouldn't eat stewed tripe Spanish, they are a delicacy. A crowd around a window. On your tiptoes to see. It's that fascinating Lilliputian with a beard and electric bowels who stands in the drugstore windows and administers corn cure to his own toes with a smile. The professional window shopper is a vagabond at heart, a loiterer by nature. Here is one gazing in a photographer's window to discover someone he knows. These two are not professionals, though, but a spring couple looking in furniture windows for nest material. And sailors wandering about, nothing but kiddies, lonesome looking, and no doubt wishing we were at war again and hospitable once more. Here is a Persian market, and a Grant market beside it. There is a lot of that in San Francisco. Is there an Imperial Donut? Up goes a Supreme Donut next door. It's the spirit of "I'll go you one better every time." It's the spirit of Market Street. End of chapter 9.
Chapter 10 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Betty B. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 10. Cafeterias. This is not to hurt the feelings of anyone, for some people are very sensitive about cafeterias. They are cafeteria wise. They have a cafeteria class consciousness. Such people are to be admired. They have accurate minds which enable them to choose a well-balanced meal at minimum cost. Lacking that sort of mind, I do not get on well in cafeterias. As sure as I equip myself with a tray and silver in a napkin and become one of the long procession, I lose all sense of proportion and come out at the end with 2 desserts, or a preponderance of starches, or with too much bread for my butter, and a surprising bill. Those who are cafeteria wise can choose a good meal for 28 cents or 33 cents at the most. They don't take food just because it looks delicious. They yield not to temptation. They have a plan and stick to it. Wise and strong-minded, they shuffle their way bravely to the end. It is said that in time they acquire a cafeteria shuffle, which one can detect even on the street, but I don't believe it's so. Other sections of the country have cafeterias, and in some parts of the South, especially in Louisville, they are run quite extensively. But it is in the West, especially in California, that they have attained a dignity and even lavishness that makes them the surprise and delight of the tourist. Irvin Cobb says that this is the cafeteria belt of which Los Angeles is the buckle. We have music in our cafeterias. We have flowers on the table. People don't just eat in them, they dine. They take their guests there. Our cafeterias have galleries with rocking chairs and stationery. They have distinctive architecture. We take visitors to see them. We brag about them, and when we wish to be especially smart, we pronounce them cafeteria. Personally, I am proud of our cafeterias, but I do not get on in them. I enter hungry. I look sideways to see what other folks are eating. I decide to have corned beef and cabbage and peach shortcake and nothing else. Then, in the line, I have the hurried feeling of people back of me, and that I ought to make quick decisions. Everyone ought to eat salad, so I take a salad. Then some roast beef looks good, so I take that. And the girl asks briskly with the big spoon poised if I'll take potatoes. And I don't wish potatoes, but she makes a great nest of them beside the meat and fills the nest with gravy, and I pass on. According to Hoover or Maria Parloa or Roosevelt, I ought to have a vegetable, and so I take two. Meanwhile, I have taken bread, but the woman ahead takes hot scones, and so I do. I choose some thick cream cake, very fattening, but just this once. And then, oh, I don't know. The tray is heavy and no place to put it, and in my journeying I peek at the bill, and it's over 75 cents. And when I finally sit down opposite a stranger, I find on my tray 2 salads, and when I chose the other, I don't remember. But cafeterias are very fine for those who have cafeteria sense. End of chapter 10.
Chapter 11 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Eva Davis. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 11. The Open Board of Trade. Months ago, one of the journal readers suggested a story to be found down on Market Street, near the Hobart Building. Many times since, when passing there, I have thought that these street hawkers must have a certain picturesque and even humorous value, and hoping to find it, I have stopped to listen. But the moment I stop, they win me with their everlasting logic, and then, blessed if I can write them up. They have the same effect upon others. I have seen chambers of commerce and stock exchangers and professors from Berkeley passing with a supercilious glance, which did very well so long as they kept moving. But once let them step into the magic ring, and they too become mesmerized, and stood there gaping in spellbound interest. Logic is logic, that's all I say. Those hawkers are artists, skilled in the arts and wiles of persuasiveness. There is one with a long horsehair wig, which he occasionally brushes back from his eyes with a dignified flourish. This man has found the supreme elixir and the secret of perpetuity. He is the only man in the world, this modern Ponce de Leon, who knows the secret. Surely we need not blush to listen to its exposition. $2 is a small sum to pay for such a bonanza. 40,000 people have used it in the last 39 days. Think of it. Take it right out into the crowd and sniff it for yourself, he urges. And somehow that breaks the spell, and strong men look foolishly at each other and move away. Horoscopes, suspenders, iron watch charms, brown cakes that may pass for maple sugar, ironing wax, laundry soap or panuccia, a book on prohibition, mending wax, and books of magic are all there. They are not things which we particularly want, but that's the point. Anyone can sell things that people want. But these men are professional persuaders of men against their will, whose mission it is to make people want what they don't want. That's art. The horoscope seller must have taken his degree from some college of vendors. His call has such finesse. I cannot reproduce the lilt of it. Here's where you get your horoscope. A dime, 10 cents. It is suggestive of the midways of country fairs, shooting galleries on the boardwalk, and circuses in the springtime. Here's where you get your horoscope. A dime, 10 cents. A little old blind man sitting there with one hand outstretched and the other holding a book, his white hair and beard neatly combed, reminds me of something biblical and prophetic, like pictures in old churches. Alas, no one seems to buy his story of Prohibition. I think he would do lots better in Kansas or Iowa. A particularly fascinating one is the man of mending wax, who stands before his table like some professor of chemistry, with a tiny flame and saucers of mysterious powders and, I almost said, a blowpipe. But pshaw, I can't write them up. I take them too seriously. Logic is logic, that's all I say. End of chapter 11.
Chapter 12 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Nemo. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 12. The San Francisco Police. The San Francisco Police are the handsomest and most willing to flirt policemen in the United States, if not in the world. What a surly lot the New York policemen. They treat one as though he were a blackguard for merely asking some direction. What car shall I take for the New Jersey Central Ferry, we ask. Zippity-up, he snaps, moving off. What did you say? We ask in timid desperation. Zippity-up, he yells, shaking his fist at us. But ask a San Francisco policeman the way, and how different. He will take your arm and smile down at you and even go away with you chatting all the time. Stranger here? Well, you'll never go back east again. And somehow, after that you never do. Of course, the San Francisco police are many things besides being handsome and willing to flirt, but these are important qualifications which, up to this time, have never had their place in journalism. Ah, many a Raleigh and Don Quixote in the roster of the SF Police. A policeman is all things to all people. What a policeman is depends upon what we are. To those who are fast, either in reputation or driving, he is a limb of the law to be either evaded or cajoled. To the small boy he is a hero to aspire to become when grown. To the public-spirited citizen of the reforming order, he is a piece of community linen to be periodically washed in public, with a great hue in the papers about graft expose. To almost anybody in the dead of night, with burglars prowling about, he is a friend to be called, in case one has a nickel handy. But to the great army of women who are hopelessly respectable, the policeman is something quite different. And what we women think of the police is important. We pay taxes, we vote, and we cross the street. We like our policemen to be handsome and cavalier, and again I say, the SF police are both. Any fine day they will make a funeral procession out of the motor traffic to escort a nice woman across Market Street. It goes without saying, and is an unwritten law, that policemen should be Irish. I enjoy Greeks in classic literature or in restaurants, but not as policemen. There is a saying in the city that when Greek meets Greek, they go together to get a job on the Market Street railways. But when they get upon the police force, I, for one, shall move to the country. Policemen should always be Irish. And handsome. This is a woman's reason. But listen, O men, are they not, I ask, a part of the civic beauty of the city? Is it not important that these animated equestrian statues should be gallant men upon noble and spirited horses? And who is more imperial in the pictorial life of the city than the officer on the Lotta Fountain pedestal, by the raising of whose sceptred hand The life of the city moves or stays. Yes, policemen should be handsome and gallant. It is written. End of chapter 12.
Chapter 13 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by S.K. Edison, New Jersey. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 13, A Marine View. Russian Hill had always seemed economically remote to me as an abiding place until recently I was invited out where some people were living in a modest apartment with a good view of the bay. And when they suggested that I try to get an apartment over there, I decided to do it. It was a beautiful morning when I started out. There stood Russian Hill, and as Gibraltar bristles with armaments, so it glittered with windows facing the sea, and one of them for me. Perhaps I could get a few rooms from a nice Italian family and fix them up. Ah, the Latin Quarter, Greenwich Village, the ghosts of artists haunting the place, bohemians, enthusiasm, the lust for adventure. I bristled with personality. "Oh, you want a marine view?" said the real estate man. "Not for that price, lady." A marine view? I didn't want a marine view. I only wanted one window facing the sea. Surely, with all those windows. I left the real estate man and began wandering about. I asked a group of Italian women, and they exclaimed in a chorus, "No marine views left." I hadn't said a thing about a marine view. I wandered further, and it was always the same. Some were smug, and some were sorry, but they all spoke of a marine view, in a certain tone of voice, as Boston people say Boston. It was getting hot. I could not remove my coat because my waist was a lace front. Only a hairnet restrained me from utter frumpiness. Still, I was not altogether beaten, and when I came to a nice countrified-looking house, standing alone in the midst of modern art, and a man came out, I asked him. The moment I did, there came into his eyes a hunted glitter, and he told me how he had held out against them, and how he had been besieged for years to rent his marine view and wouldn't. As I turned away, I met an Irish delivery man, and he said that there were dozens of vacant apartments very reasonable, and waved his hand vaguely in the direction where I had been searching. I liked the Irish, but his cheerful fibbery was the last straw, and I went home. The next day my friends called up and said that they had a marine view for me. I was to live all summer in the apartment of the so-and-sos while they were away. So now I am. They are artistic, and I drink my coffee from saffron-colored cups on a bay-green table runner over a black table under a turquoise-blue ceiling, with a view of the bay from the window. But I'm humble, and if some day I meet a hot, tired-looking woman who can't find an apartment on Russian Hill, I shall say, "Shucks, the marine view isn't so much." End of chapter 13.
Chapter 14 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 14. Hilly-Cum-Go. This is a story for children, because they will know it's only fooling, while grown-up people will believe it's true. The cable car isn't a car at all, children, but is a Hilly-Cum-Go, a species of rocking horse and a grown-up kiddie car. It is a native of and peculiar to San Francisco, and is a loyal member of the NSGW. It has relatives in the South, and the electric dinky that rolls up and down between Venice and Santa Monica is its first cousin. Some say that it is distantly related to the wheelchairs at Atlantic City. It is not at all common. The men who run it are its uncles. The parents live underground caring for the young kiddie cars. At times, if you peek down in that hole near the Fairmont and are careful not to be run over, you may see them bustling about. Before she was married, the mama was a Marjorie Daw of the Daw family, famous seesawers. The children take after their mother. The uncles are very kind, and pick the Hilly-Cum-Goes up in their arms as tenderly as a woman would. You must have seen them pick the little things up and run with them across the streets out of the way of autos. And at night they tuck them in their little beds and hear them say their prayer, which goes, "Oh, dear me, I hope I am able, all day long, to keep my cable." These Hilly-Cum-Goes are not run by electricity at all, but just pretend. They're run by three things: black magic, white magic, and a sense of humor. Black magic takes them up the hills, white magic restrains them down, and the sense of humor is in the Irish conductors. You may hear, if you listen, the magic coming out of the ground. Kibble cable, only fast as anything. At noontime it goes putter, 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 and at bedtime, cuddle kitty, cuddle kitty. This magic is very, very important, especially going downhill. Did you ever, my dears, descend that precipice at the end of the Fillmore Street line? What is it that keeps you from landing flat on your nose on Union Street? Nothing but white magic. What is it that keeps you from shooting from the Fairmont straight down into the St. Francis? White magic. The sense of humor is also very important. Suppose a stout person gets on, the conductor hops immediately to the opposite side for ballast. That takes a sense of humor. If the Hilly-Cum-Go is full of young people, especially sweethearts, the uncle jiggles the Hilly-Cum-Go horribly, but if old people are on, it goes see-saw Marjorie Daw, just gently. I trust, dear children, that all these facts will make you appreciate more the Hilly-Cum-Go, and when you sit on it so cozy, so intimate with the street, riding along looking at the scenery, you will be thankful that poor old horses do not have to tug you uphill, and that you have this sturdy little creature to haul you about. Nice little old Hilly-Cum-Go. End of chapter 14.
Chapter 15 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Michael Facio. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 15. I'll get it changed, lady. This expressman was a regular San Franciscan. And there is such a thing, you know, as a regular San Franciscan. He is a native son and more. His speech betrays him. He calls a car a car, and when he's surprised he says, yeah. He has a permanent laugh in his eyes, and the only thing he gets mad about is prohibition. But the particular thing that I started to say of him is that money is to him a thing to spend. Money is an incident to life, that's all. He said it would be $1, 6 bits. And I was sorry, but I only had a $10 bill. When I said that, he just reached out and took it from me, and said he'd get it changed, and disappeared. Now the significant thing, and the one that made him a regular San Franciscan, was that he never dreamed that I would doubt his honesty in returning with the change. And I didn't. It was this last that surprised me. If it had been in New York, I gasped. If it had been in New York, no expressman would have dared to do such a thing because no one would have trusted him. And if they had been so hick as to trust him, the expressman would have had no respect for himself if he himself were so hick as to return with the change. I never shall forget the shock of seeing a pile of newspapers in front of a drug store the day I landed in San Francisco, where men took their morning paper and threw down a nickel and even made change for a dime. Right out on the pavement, a lot of nickels lying loose and no one paying any attention. Why, in New York, well, it couldn't have been done in New York, that's all. It's not because San Francisco is not metropolitan. For San Francisco is essentially a city, just as Los Angeles will always be a terribly big country village. It's not at all a matter of population. In Connecticut, we always say that Bridgeport was a city, and New Haven, which was larger, was not. It's a bing, and a zip, and a tra-la-la-la, that makes one a city and another not. I can explain it no other way. But with all its cityfiedness there is a strange lack of suspicion, a free and easy attitude towards mere physical money that one finds in no other large city except San Francisco. In the stores the clerks will say, "Shall I put it in a sack?" And you answer, just as they hoped you would, "Oh no, I'll slip it right in my bag." In New York, as soon as one did that, she'd be nabbed on the way out for a shoplifter. Perhaps the constant use of silver money has had something to do with the matter. Paper money can be tucked away. Silver is more spendable, everyone knows that. Break a $5 bill into iron men, and it's gone. And it can't be the use of silver money alone that accounts for it. Reno has silver money, and yet there is little of the old, free Western spirit left in Reno. No, it's something to do with San Francisco, where suspicion doesn't yet grip the hearts of men and where money is made to spend. San Francisco, the last stand of the old, free West. End of chapter 15.
Chapter 16 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 16. Fillmore Street. I walk along on Fillmore Street. I try to walk very fast with eyes straight ahead. One needs a strong will to take a walkin' on Fillmore Street and keep from spending all his money. In fact, it is better to have no money at all, for then one is tempted to hold on to it. Everything in the world is in the windows on Fillmore Street. Everything. There isn't a phase of human activity that isn't represented. Every nation has its stamp. Spain, tamales and enchiladas. France, a pastry shop. Italy, spaghetti and raviolas. The islands have for sale all that's hula-hula. Here is a Hungarian restaurant. And the OK shoe shop, while you wait, is pure American. There is Sam's tailor shop. I feel as though I should know this fellow Sam. Apparently he knows me from his chummy sign. Sam, I ought to remember Sam. Do you wish to paint and varnish? Well, here you are. Or to be shaved, or have your eyebrows arched? Walk right in. Here's a place to learn to paint china. Here are drugs, corsets, religion, fish, statuary, cigars, and meats, all in a row. Meats on Fillmore Street are always choice, or selected, or stall-fed. I doubt if you could just get meat if you tried. Next to the meats, out on the table before the second-hand bookstore, is romantic old St. Elmo of mid-Victorian fame. He must have come west by Pony Express. I always stop if I have time to look at the shoes to be mended. They are like people who have fallen asleep in public, off their guard and at their very worst. Take a shoe, a real old shoe without a foot in it, and it looks so foolish, betraying so mercilessly its owner's bumps and peculiar toes. There are pathos there, too. A scrub woman's run-down shoes, a kitty's scuffed-out toes, a man's clumsy clay-stained boots, and the happy dancing slippers of a young girl. Back of the shoes, the cobbler. Cobblers are always philosophers, not pretty men, but thinkers. In their little, dingy shops they sit all day, with their eyes down, isolated from the hum and scum about them, to the tune of their tap, 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 their minds detached to think and philosophize and vision. Now we are at the corner where we turn away from Fillmore Street. There is a window full of dolls. Such a lot of homely dolls. They don't make pretty dolls anymore. They make them to look like humans. Character dolls, they call them. And they are characters. Now, when I was a little girl, They made dolls to look the way you wished human beings could look. It is not hard to turn the corner. End of chapter 16.
Chapter 17 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Betty B. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 17. In the Lobby of the St. Francis. There is something about having money enough to stay at the St. Francis, and to dine there, and to wear smart clothes there that makes people step out and act sure of themselves. Even when they can't afford it, and their stay there is a splurge or an outing, they act just as sure and stepping. And as for the people to whom the St. Francis is but an incident, they act sure because they were born that way. Never in my life have I seen such sure, well-dressed women as in the lobby of the St. Francis. And I am no greenhorn at lobbies. I have reviewed in my day some of the best peacock alleys in the country. There is the New Willard. Now when I think of the New Willard, I see frumpily dressed dowagers talking through their lorgnettes to moth-eaten senators. The Selbach in Louisville, the St. Charles in New Orleans, are famed for their handsome women, but none are so free and proudly sure of themselves on Peacock Alley as California women. No women dress as they do, either. They are not so chic as they are smart. Their tailor-mades, their furs, their hats with a preponderance of orange, their well-dressed legs and feet, and a reserved brilliance that makes them the finest-looking women in the United States. It is a fine pastime to step out from the surge of life for a minute and let it ebb and flow around one in the lobby of the St. Francis. Such a pageant of individual stories. An exquisitely dressed young girl meets another there, and soon two young chaps appear, and they all begin talking silly nothings, and laughing at each other's silly jokes, and looking into each other's foolish young eyes, much as lovers have always done. A harassed business man rushes frantically to the telegraph desk and wires his firm at Pittsburgh. Some staid, comfortably fixed tourists from Newton Center, Massachusetts, come in from sightseeing and go up to their rooms and quickly get their shoes off. A group of Elks come in, arm-linked, and start one wondering about the enforcement of the dry law. In and out among all these moving comedies and tragedies flits like an orange-colored butterfly a little Oriental boy. An angel-faced page goes calling, "Mr. Smith," and sober-looking bellhops stand alert to the sound of "Front." A beautiful woman steps forward and meets a handsome man, and they go to dinner together. And somehow I don't think he is her husband, and wonder if she is a widow, and decide that it is none of my business. If she has a husband, he's probably an ornery fellow who never takes her anywhere. Everyone who passes by me looks alert and sure and happy and prosperous, but I comfort myself that probably each one of them has as much to worry about as I myself do. End of chapter 17.
Chapter 18. The Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. The Garbage Man's Little Girl. This vignette is written because it can't help itself, and it carries with it a hope that someone who reads it may know a little girl whose father is a garbage man. Suppose that you can't think of anyone just now who is the daughter to a garbage man. It is best that you read this just the same, for you never know when you may meet her. When you do, tell her not to care too much when the children at school tease her about her father and cry, "Pew! Pew! Here comes the garbage, garbage, garbage!" Tell her at that time to try and sustain her personal integrity with philosophy. It won't do her a particle of good, but tell her just the same. Tell her that her father is a terribly useful man, that if he should fail to function, then the disposal of garbage would become an individual problem, and that mammas of kids whose fathers are not garbage men would be obliged to say to their husbands, "Ed, dear, don't forget to take the garbage bucket to the public incinerator on your way to the office." Tell her that just because her father collects dirt, it is no disgrace. Tell her to look at the people in good standing who peddle dirt. Tell her to look at the papers. Tell her to tell the world that it's better any day to collect than to peddle dirt. Tell her that when her father, up on his great smelly throne, drives around the corner of Powell and Gary, that dressed-up folk needn't disdain him so much. He's a sermon. They won't like him as a sermon so much as a garbage man, but he's a sermon just the same. The text is that back of most things that are dainty and beautiful is the drudgery worker. Tell her that there isn't an immaculate kitchen in San Francisco that doesn't depend upon her father, nor a feast at the Palace or the St. Francis. Tomato skins in the nest that cauliflowers come in, and gnawed T-bones. What would become of them if she had no father? And coffee grounds and the nameless things that have been forgotten and burned by the absent-minded. Tell the little girl about Omar Khayyam and how he might have said, "Oh, many a charred secret in the garbage can goes, that from the kitchen range in blackened cloud once rose." Tell her that there is a professor at Yale whose father was a junk man. All this and more tell the garbage man's little girl. End of chapter 18. The Garbage Man's Little Girl.
Chapter 19 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by S.K. Edison, New Jersey. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 19. The Palace. Someone was telling me of an old couple who lost everything they owned at the time of the fire, and that they were very brave about it, and never broke down, and even helped others, but that when someone came running up and said, "The palace is on fire," they both sat down on the curb and gave way completely to grief. And they say that after the fire, the first piece of publicity which is given to the world as a proof that San Francisco would come back was that the palace would be rebuilt immediately. And a man from Virginia City, a descendant of the Comstock days, told me that in Nevada they speak of the palace as Russians speak of the Kremlin as a pivot of destiny. What I am trying to say, of course, is that the palace is a tradition, just as the Waldorf Astoria is a tradition, only not at all in the same way. The palace is a great place for women who are alone, and a place where a man may bring the missus with impunity. The palace is stylish, perhaps, but principally it is select. It suggests to me women who wear suits of clothes, mostly dark grey, all wool and a yard wide, women who wear 2 petticoats and Hanan shoes and Knox hats, and who carry suitcases covered with foreign express tags, and whom porters run to meet because they know that these women may not be so stylish as they are generous tippers. And the palace suggests to me afternoon teas, and that peculiar composite chatter of women's voices, which is more like the sounds of birds in a flock, and which Powys speaks of as a strange, inarticulate chitter-chatter which isn't really speech at all. The other day, a well-groomed young official from the hotel took me out to see the famous old Palace Bar and the beautiful Maxfield Parrish painting above it. They have taken the rail away, and around the edge of the bar they have built a nicely finished woodwork wall which looks exactly like a great coffin, the coffin of John Barleycorn. After the manner of my species, I wanted to see over the edge, and the young man, thinking that I might be suspecting a blind pig, boosted me up to peck over. I asked him why they didn't remove the bar entirely, and he said with unsmiling naivete that they were waiting to see, and that they had saved the rail in case. If I were a reformer, I should agitate and have that remarkably joyous and beautiful parish painting placed where it could be seen. I take it out to some San Francisco school so that the dear Pied Piper and all the little round kiddies running after should be a delight to school children. And now I have come to the end, and all that I have said is that the Palace Hotel is the San Francisco tradition, and everyone in the United States knew that long ago. End of chapter 19.
Chapter 20 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Eva Davis. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 20. Zoe's Garden. Zoe says emphatically that it is not her garden, but everybody's garden. But it is her garden because she tends it, and every morning goes around among her flowers, lovingly, giving a little dig of dirt here, and tying some frail sisters up there, and then, with her scissors, clipping, snipping, and nipping away. Yes, it is Zoe's garden. Anything that has spunk to grow is welcome in this essentially San Franciscan garden, and no one is allowed to bully the others. Big burly geraniums and proud dahlias must keep in their places, and give the dainty lobelia, cinnamon pinks, oxalis, and candytuft their chance. The oxalis! How we tended it in pots in New England, and out here in California. Bless its heart, it runs around like a native daughter. As for the fuchsia, how far it has grown from the blue laws. There is no formality in Zoe's garden. Marigolds go wandering about in the most trampish manner, and poppies, because they are privileged characters, spring up as they please. Then, as though the two of them were not sufficient California gold, there is the faithful gaillardia, with its prim little sunflower faces smiling up at their mother sun. It is a democratic garden, too. Goldenrod and asters grow right in among the aristocrats. Fancy the snubbing they would get if they once ventured into a New England garden. There is freedom there, but not license, and every opportunity for individuality. The gladiolas, Canterbury bells, gillyflowers, and foxgloves grow as prim as in a conservative English garden. Pansies smile in their little bed, and although the nasturtium, the wild-growing, happy-go-lucky nasturtium, goes visiting around among all his neighbours, he is never allowed to interfere with those who wish to keep by themselves. The sweet peas stay very close to their tradition of wire netting, but they are not snobs at all, and give of their bounty to all who call. The sensuous jasmine is there, and the cold puritanical cineraria, and old maid's pincushions with fragrance of sandalwood. The red-hot poker grows stiff and straight, but the ragged sailor goes uncombed and untidy still. Cosmos is coming soon, dressed in her very feminine clothes, and the coreopsis has come on ahead. All old-timers are represented there. Honeysuckle, wormwood, petunias, rosemary, gilias, mignonette, heliotrope, and foxgloves. If they cannot all be there together, all are there at some time in the summer. Montbretia, Japanese sunflower, larkspur, columbine, and gourds, all have their time and place and opportunity in this San Francisco garden. And the hollyhocks, the bossy things, I've a mind to leave them out. Besides, I know some gossip about them. When Zoe was away to Yosemite one morning, they were all leaning over from too much moonshine or too much sunshine. And, well, I won't repeat what the marigolds told me about them. Besides, it is time to come away from Zoe's garden, which is everybody's garden.
End of chapter 20.
Chapter 21 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Nemo. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 21. Children on the Sidewalk. When you were a little girl, when you were a little boy, where did you play? Was it in a barn? Was it a city park? Did you hunt gophers on the plains of Iowa? Perhaps it was in a California poppy field. Perhaps a graveyard. I played in one, and remember very vividly the grave of Josephine Sarah Hutchinson, who died at the age of 11 months, and had a little lamb on the top of her stone, and an inscription, "Except ye become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven." Many delightful games we played around the grave of little Josephine. Wherever childhood found us we played, and out of our environment, and often in spite of it, lived in a delightful world of our own into which no grown-up ever really entered. Now, you and I, grown-up, walk along the sidewalks of San Francisco, and all we see under our calloused old feet is a sidewalk. But to children, even a sidewalk blossoms with possibilities. Who but a child invented, "Step on a crack, you break your mother's back"? Only the other day I saw a kitty avoiding every crack and muttering some incantation as he walked along. And out of the sidewalk grew all the different types of kitty cars and coasters that are so prevalent. I saw a whole load of children zipping down a steep San Francisco hill the other day, much as we children coasted down winter hills on wicked double rippers. A hill in gravity, and a lot of kids. What possibilities! And out of the sidewalk have evolved those nameless explosives that have been so popular over the recent Fourth. A row of kids sitting on a curb. One of them darts out to the car track. A car comes. Great expectancy from the kids, terrific noise, annoyed looks on the faces of sour adults, unbounded joy from a row of kids sitting on the curb. Recently I saw a tomboy who had organized the children in her block, and had confiscated an alley between two straight gray houses, and I don't know what the game was, but it entailed trips on a car down the alley, and a very bossy motorman, and turns over which everyone quarreled. Some dainty little Chinese girls were playing a sidewalk game with a white stone which was a version of an old child game. The child would hop to the stone and kick it away, and hop to it again until she missed, the object being to beat her opponent in the distance traveled. And I saw some exquisite little Japanese girls playing jump rope and chanting one of the numerous litanies that go with that beautiful game. The sidewalks of San Francisco. They are full of adventure. Robert Louis Stevenson would have seen it all. But to our dull eyes are only gray cement block. Just a sidewalk to us, and to kiddies there are mountains in which Roy Gardner hides, and woods, and Tom Mix on a horse dashes right past us, and we never see him at all. End of chapter 21.
Chapter 22 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Betty B. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 22. Feet that Pass on Market Street. There is something about walking along Market Street, with the procession of people that passes all day. Ah, how shall I express it? It is thrilling and it is amusing. It is cosmic and it is puny. It is often ridiculous and always sublime. Sometimes, when we are in most of a hurry, the consciousness of the procession will come to us. It is as though we were one of a moving crowd that never began and will never end. At such times we listen to the sound of their feet, the steady, unceasing step by step, an endless tramp as though it were beating out the rhythm, eternity, eternity, eternity. As we pass, voices call to us from the wayside. A cripple, so far down below us on the very ground, offering his silent pencils. The allurement of flowers. A hoarse newsboy with his old face screwed into 1,000 anxious wrinkles. A blind man, silent, supplicant, twirling his thumbs, and from the windows the call of strawberries at 15 cents a basket. Overhead an aeroplane hums its way and receives from us the tribute of an upward glance. We gaze upward and think how many years before our day aeroplanes were flying overhead in the dreams of men who passed and passed in the long procession. Idly we glimpse faces that pass us in the procession that meets ours. We pass them and are never the wiser for the struggle and tragedy that may be going on behind their show of brave masks. A man clutching his last dime and wondering whether to spend it for rolls and coffee or coffee and rolls. A business man absorbed and a lady pondering deeply some detail of her dress. A young girl with soft, unmassaged chin hurrying to keep a tryst with her friend, and country folks, their feet sore on the unaccustomed pavements, glad to be going home soon. It is such an orderly procession, and although they all seem to be walking along forever, there is an order in their going and each is on his way. Each one is free to go to his own place, and yet no one is free. No one is free to leave the procession once he gets into it. Once a man is born, he's done for. Let him veer 1 iota from that procession, and soon there will come rumbling up to the curb a big black Maria, and off he's whisked away from his fellows. Let him but get into the wrong house, or take the wrong overcoat, or chuck the wrong person under the chin. Let him forget where the long procession leads, and wander about a free spirit, and his wanderings will lead him to the madhouse. I love to be one of the procession that marches forever up and down Market Street. Such a brave procession. End of chapter 22. Chapter 23 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Betty B. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 23. Where the Centuries Meet. She was a tourist, and she had just finished Sing Fat's. As she passed out of the door, she said smugly to her companion, "I don't see anything so wonderful here." I was standing right there, and I said, "Madam, if you have been through Sing Fat's and have failed to see anything wonderful, then you should go home and give yourself the Binet test, which is used to test the intelligence of children." Oh, of course, I didn't say this so that the lady could hear. The bravest speeches we humans make are never allowed. Then I continued, "Madam, you may travel far in mileage, but you will never take anything back to Dingville, Kansas, richer than a souvenir ashtray." Why, just to take a trip from Sing Fat's to the White House is a tremendous journey if one has the perceiving faculty. In Sing Fat's a bit of old cloisonné, tiny pieces of enamel on silver, done with infinite pains by hand labor, perhaps centuries ago, grown beautiful with age. In the White House, Georgette flowers, exquisite things made for the passing minute, a whiff and a whim and off they go. Just in these two there is a meeting of the centuries, handcraft days and the machine age, B.C. and A.D., the oldest civilization in the world and the newest. The most interesting thing in Chinatown are the Chinese. To some they all look alike, but to me they seem very human and individual and folksy. I find myself paraphrasing, but for the grace of God, there goes John Bradford. And when I meet a crafty-looking old Chinaman, this whimsy comes to me. If Deacon Bushnell, who passed the plate in the Centerville Methodist Church, had been a Chinaman, this is the way he would have looked. They are such small-town folks. Even with a steady cycle of tourists, they gaze at each newcomer as though he were the latest comer to Podunk. One day with a friend I called on a Chinese girl, and all the large family and their friends gathered around and discussed us, and laughed among themselves and pointed at us. It was embarrassing, but I was never once conscious of rudeness, simply a childlike curiosity and honesty. In Chinatown the other day a peddler was selling spectacles, and somehow the old men trying them on and squinting for near and for far seemed so quaint and countrified, and like a lot of old Yankees around a country store trying to get a new pair of eyes, by heck. In Chinatown the Tong men do not seem at all real, and the hair-raising movie serial with its Chinatown terrors. Buddhist idols that open and swallow the movie actors, and floors that drop into dungeons, seem very remote. End of chapter 23.
Chapter 24 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Michael Fazio. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 24. Bags or Sacks. Do you like cafeterias? I asked. Don't know, he answered. I've never played them. What religion do you follow? Another man asked me. In a mining camp they told me to take such and such a trail. The point is that we do not talk that way where I came from. Of course, I hasten to say, we doubtless talked some other way just as peculiar. And if I could detect our colloquialisms, I would write a lot about them, but alas, I can't. I was in the West 2 years before I noticed that a trolley is a streetcar. A woman in a mining camp said to the stage driver, I want out at the bank because I don't want to pack this sack of silver. In the first place, we wouldn't have had a sack of silver, and if we had, it would have been in a bag, not a sack. And we never pack things, and we never want out. In the East, we never refer to our locality as this country, as in the West and South. We do not take the name of our state either as Californian or Kentuckian. One never hears of a Connecticutian or a Massachusettsian. I do not profess to give any reasons for these peculiarities. In the West, speech is more brief. Autos go slow is the warning, while on the Fenway in Boston the signs read, Motor vehicles, proceed slowly. I wouldn't swear to the comma, but the words are identical. There's a small town near Provincetown where a sign reads, Friends, we wish to think well of you, and we wish you to think well of us. Kindly observe the 10-mile motor limit. After that, the roads are so bad that one couldn't possibly exceed 10 miles if he tried. Probably the longest sign in California is the one that reads, Drive your fool heads off. Booze fighters are Western. Oh, they're Eastern too, but under a different name. It's a misleading term, that, as though one were fighting against booze like an anti-salooner. I actually know of a woman who came west and thought for a long time that a booze fighter was a dry. In the East he is a rummy, and when he's drunk he's tight. It's a fright is Western. Ornery is Middle Western. That's a wonderful word. Sometimes I wish I could live my life over with ornery in my vocabulary. It describes so many people I never knew just how to classify. There are no T-bones in the East, and scrambled brains are not common. Oh, of course we have them, but not as something to eat. Personally, I was brought up to reverence brains, and when I see them lying pale and messy on a plate in a Greek restaurant, I confess it gives me a start. Hot tamales have never crossed the plains east, and baked beans have never come west, not real ones. The difference between the Eastern baked bean and the Western is all the difference between a tin can and a religious rite, and it is the same with succotash. A cruller is only a fried donut when it gets out west. Tea is more subtle in the East, but out here the waitress will ask, "Black or green?" in a black or white tone, and stands over you until you decide. Maybe you don't want black tea, maybe you don't want green, but just tea. But there she stands in her unequivocation. Black or green? Silver money has never traveled East. A man told me recently that he didn't like silver money when he first came out here, and that it was always wearing his pockets out, but since he'd gotten into Western ways, it never wore a hole in his pockets any more. In the East, a change purse is scorned by anything masculine, but here all the men carry one. I don't know why not in the East, nor why in the West. Blessed old 2 bits and a $1 6 are the only woolly things left over from the old Wild West. What else? Oh, I could keep going on for pages. Stay with it is Western and has lots more feeling, I think, than stick to it. A Westerner, when his wife and babies were going back East to visit her relatives, telegraphed to her brother, "Elizabeth and outfit arrive Tuesday." And until she arrived, the brother spent his time in conjecturing as to just what an outfit would mean. Rhubarb plant is rhubarb in the East and also a pie plant. And one day I was in a fruit store, and when the man, he was Greek, yelled, "What else?" I could only think of pie plant, and so I didn't get any. It's all in the way you are brought up, Eastern, and all in the way you are raised, Western. End chapter 24.
Chapter 25 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Glennie Junkin, St. Charles, Missouri. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 25. Portsmouth Square. Quote, "To be honest, to be kind," unquote. Loiterers, vagabonds, slow-going Orientals, poets and blackguards all day long come and drink at Stevenson's fountain. Some of them look up and read it all, and some only get as far as, quote, "to earn a little, to spend a little less," unquote. Small-footed Chinese women pass, humping along on their stumps, and their babies running along beside have larger feet than the mothers who bore them. Bench-warmers gaze after them with lazy curiosity. A fat Italian granddaddy washes a kiddie's hand from the fountain, and a man with a demijohn and a sense of humor goes smilingly down the path, and what he has in the demijohn is none of our business. Quote, "To make, on the whole, a family happier for his presence," unquote. It is noon, and a bride has brought lunch for herself and her husband off the job in his white overalls, and the two eat together on the beautiful grassy slope. The poplar trees around Stevenson's fountain whisper poetry all day long, and the little iron boat on top looks sad not to be sailing away on high adventure to the South Sea Islands. Quote, "To renounce when it shall be necessary and not be embittered," unquote. A woman with a baby carriage comes by. Something tender and sane and everyday and basic about her and her baby. A Chinese woman passing looks for all the world like a black and iridescent purple grackle in her shiny black coat and shiny black pants and shiny black shoes and shiny black hair, although the grackle has a prouder strut than her dancing little trot. Quote, "To keep a few friends and those without capitulation," unquote. Where, oh where do all the men come from who lie stretched out on the grass? I've seen the very same men lying on Boston Common, and when my father was a boy he said he saw them there. Hats over their eyes or else blinking up at the blue sky. Then on the curb facing the Hall of Justice, philosophers up from the waterfront or fresh from boxcars, every one with a story that Stevenson would have got from them. Quote, "Above all on the same grim conditions to keep friends with himself," unquote. On the bench an enormous woman with a hat that looks like a schooner atop of a great pompadour wave, and on the very same bench a mummied old Chinese as thin as a wafer. An aeroplane hums above, and Stevenson's little boat looks envious. Where did Captain Montgomery of the sloop Portsmouth stand when he planted the flag in 1848? The mission bell, so many miles to Dolores, so many miles to Raphael. Ring, mission bell, ring and show us where the El Camino Real will lead us all by and by. We who pass all day, show us the way, mission bell. Quote, here is a task for all that a man has of fortitude and delicacy. Unquote. End of chapter 25.
Chapter 26 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Larry Wilson. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 26. Miracles. Why, who makes much of a miracle? As for me, I know of nothing else but miracles. Whether I walk the streets of Manhattan, or dart my sight over the roofs of houses toward the sky, or wade with naked feet along the beach just in the edge of the water, or stand under trees in the woods, or sit at table at dinner with the rest, or look at strangers opposite me riding in the car. Walt Whitman. If a man or woman be at all sensitive to life, he must react to the commonplace much as Whitman did. Such a person may be hurrying along about his business with perhaps no time for reflection, and yet in a flash the miracle of life will come to him through the slightest happening. A little girl on the ferry sitting with her mother takes from her small prim bag a set of doll clothes and fondles them and soothes them much like a pullet with her first chickens. The sight of those square little gingham dresses, trimmed with scraps of lace and silk and with awkward sleeves standing straight out, brought to me on that Oakland ferry all my childhood again, and I was cuddled close between the surface roots of a great elm, and from the nearby lane came the sight and scent of bouncing bet, Joe Pye weed, tansy, yarrow, goldenrod, boneset, and over in the meadow the sight of cows and the smell of peppermint and watercress beside a little stream. The moment I write it down in physical words it becomes somehow less miraculous. The mind is so infinite and the human being so essentially mental that the spoken or written word may never express them. The sight of electric lights flashing at night, the view of the city from a cable car, the wonder of great trucks bearing down upon us like fiery-eyed dragons, a bunch of poppies growing close to the roots of a billboard in the heart of the city, and the silhouette of a young girl, wind-blown, so that her straight, slender figure shows more beautiful than the statue that tops Union Square. Up Kearny Street the glimpse of eucalyptus trees on the top of Telegraph Hill standing out against the pink sunset sky, the postman with his pack of human messages on his back, the spirit of Robert Louis Stevenson in Portsmouth Square, and a row of old men sitting in the sun on Union Square discussing the universe. Did you ever stand listening to the seals just at nightfall? And did their weird low call stir you to a feeling of kinship with all the creatures of the great deep? And did you lose yourself there out under the cold dark water in that mysterious untamed world of the sea that is older than the land? I don't know what it's all about. I only know we need more poets. Still, every man who reacts to life and feels it to be a miracle, he is himself a poet. Even Whitman could only articulate in terms of wonder. End of chapter 26.
Chapter 27 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by S.K. Edison, New Jersey. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 27. Impulses and Prohibitions. One day last week, a man, a regular man, neither a decided proletarian nor a typical bourgeois, but just a man, was walking along. He was dressed in average clothes. He was shaved and carried a suitcase and didn't look out of work and was evidently going somewhere. He was walking along with his suitcase. It was in Larkin near McAllister, about 2 o'clock on one of those superb days of last week, and he came to a place where there was a stretch of grass near the sidewalk. I think he was hot, and the suitcase was getting heavy. At any rate, when he saw that grass, tall, dark green and fragrant, he immediately lay down on it, pulled his hat over his eyes, and, I expect, went to sleep. It sounds so free and easy written down, which makes it no less significant. First, it was significantly Western. An Easterner or a Middle Westerner would have thought it over first. Then the fact that the man was so average made it significant. If he had looked like a vagabond, it would have been not even an incident. It is we who are respectable who are fettered by Grundy. It was a logical thing to do, and natural and terribly human, but most of us can do the logical thing and natural even if inside we do feel terribly human. Especially these spring days. Today at noon I would like to have gone up on the grass in Union Square and taken my shoes off. Why didn't I? Not because of the police, but Grundy. Now a Paiute Indian woman would have done it. Her stockings too. A Paiute Indian woman, when she is tired, she sits down right in the street, right where she is tired. But you and I, when we are weary, we may sigh, wish I could sit down. But we can't. Not until we've gone down the street and up in the elevator to some particular place where Grundy says we may sit. The most significant thing about that man on the grass was that he was in the heart of a great city. Cities are like homes. Some you're comfortable in, some you're not. Now, San Francisco, it is a real city, with all the metropolitan Larrys and Penates, dignified and vividly active. And yet there is no city in the country whose children may be as at home as here. It is the only city I know of that has forgotten to provide itself with nasty little "keep off the grass" signs. It'll probably never be an altogether prohibition town. End of chapter 27.
Chapter 28 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Betty B. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 28. Stopping at the Fairmont. It is best to say at the very beginning that if one is tremendously wealthy, he will not enjoy this dissertation on staying at high-class hotels. If one has more than 2 bathrooms in his house and can afford chicken when it is not Sunday and turkey when it is not Christmas, and could stay at the Fairmont all winter if he preferred, then these words will mean nothing to him. She has gone, this friend of mine. All winter she has been staying at the Fairmont. Much of the time I, too, have been staying at the Fairmont as her guest. So it is with a sense of double bereavement that I write. Talk to me no more of the comfort of cozy little homes. Give me a hotel where I am treated as though I were a somebody, where I have but to press a button and a liveried servant comes running as though I were Mary, Queen of England, or Clara Kimball Young, and plenty of hot water for baths, and lots of enormous towels, and as soon as one's butter is gone, another piece and fresh butter at that. Pitchers of ice water, and a strapping big man standing so solicitously and watching one's every mouthful. It makes me feel as though I were the Shah of Persia. At home I don't feel at all like the Shah of Persia. I came across something the other day that Boswell quotes Dr. Johnson as saying on the same subject. There is no private house in which people may enjoy themselves as at a capital tavern. At a tavern you are sure you are welcome, and the more noise you make, the more trouble you give, the more good things you call for, the welcomer you are. This friend of mine can go to the room telephone and say, so incidentally, "Room service, please," and order a meal in her room with almost negligence. That, I say, is elegance. Taxis, too, are another test. I never order a taxi without a feeling of seasickness. Even when someone else is paying the bill, I can't sit back in comfort. Always they are ticking off the minutes, as though they were my last on this earth. They are simple tests that divide the plebeian from the patrician. Was it Kipling who wrote, If you can order breakfast in your room and not feel reckless, if you can ride in taxis with aplomb, if you can read the menu and not the prices, then you're a qualified patrician, son. After my friend had gone, I went back to the hotel, and someone else was in her room, and no one treated me as though I were the Queen of Sheba, and I went out into a cold, indifferent world where no one cares when my glass is empty, where no chair is pushed under me at table, and where, alas, I must sugar my own tea or go without. End of chapter 28.
Chapter 29 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Larry Wilson. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 29. San Francisco Sings. Some cities roar and others hum, but San Francisco sings. Especially on Saturday at noon and downtown. Saturday noon in San Francisco is like nothing else anywhere but Saturday noon in San Francisco. And Saturday noon is like the noon of no other day but Saturday. On Sunday they're off. On Saturday noon everybody's on the street. There are more flowers on Saturday noon. On the street stands great plumes of gold acacia, rides of daffodils, banks of violets, white waxy camellias, and branches of Japanese peach blossoms. It's still winter by the calendar, but it's spring in San Francisco. Everywhere you turn a man or boy from the country with baskets of the spring flowers, all you want to carry for 2 bits and a nice bunch for a dime. Big fat men and oldish men with young twinkles in their eyes sell them, unromantic but very nice to deal with. There are the flowers and there are the women. No women in the country so beautiful. No women in the world wear colors as they do. Their colors are never primitive, never gaudy, but gorgeous and vivid and alive. Seldom do you see a woman dressed in black, and black hats almost never. Sit in the gallery of any church on Sunday morning when the sun comes pouring in, and it is as though you were looking down on flowers. Never two alike in the Saturday noon crowd, and yet the same type. Free women, happy women, regular women. Women who can recall a judge or so and still be graceful and dainty. It is very significant that a San Francisco woman stands at the very pinnacle of the city, graceful and alert on that tall, slender column in Union Square. And the Saturday noon men? Men? In describing color, what can one say of them? Well, it's not their fault they can't wear pretty clothes. They make a nice gray background for the women and a very desirable audience, and that's the best I can do for them. The street musicians, they contribute a lot to the Saturday noon atmosphere, and when we drop a penny into their cups, perhaps it is not so much pity as pay for the joy their piping gives us. And the people who call papers, of whom the blind are the dearest of all. There's a blind man on Powell Street who sounds exactly as though he were saying Mass. Dearie me, I can't describe it. All its lilt and rhythm and color and humanness as well. And ladies walking along with huge white balloons from the White House as though they had been blowing bubbles from some great clay pipes. And a plump, rosy Chinese woman, so dainty in her breeches, with her shiny black hair bound in a head dress of jade and opal and turquoise. We need more poets. End of chapter 29.
Chapter 30 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Michael Fazio. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 30. Van Ness Avenue. Van Ness Avenue is soul. Nowhere in the wide world does the proud and culminating automobile own and dominate such a wide and sweeping display boulevard. The automobile, what a magnificent animal it is, long, low, luxurious, purring softly, full of a great reserve, ready to dart forward, not to the cruel touch of a spur or bit, but to the magic touch of a button. It is a culminating achievement of this period of the machine age. The airplane, clumsy and awkward as yet, belongs for its consummation to the men of tomorrow. The automobile is the zenith of today's accomplishment, and that is why men speak of it as super this and super that. The machine age has its own cruelties and its own ugliness, but it also has its own art and its own beauty, of which the automobile and the houses which men have built to accommodate it are the consummate art. Not all will agree with me here. The critics will damn me with disdain, and the king of Van Ness, who ought to agree, but is too busy talking cars, will only remark, if he listens at all, pretty good dope at that. But argumentatively I proceed. Not that I can name them. I am only sure, really sure, of a Ford. But I admire them with a great pride in my humankind. They sit so majestically in their palaces on Van Ness, great limousines, powerful roadsters, luxurious touring cars, waiting there on display and containing in themselves all the skill, energy, artifice, and beauty of line, color, and trim that the machine age can produce. And the buildings on Van Ness strike a new and independent note in architecture. All that the ages have contributed of arches, columns, coloring, and lighting are utilized and made into palaces of great dignity and beauty. There is something about the arched and windowed walls and the spacious, open look of the buildings that is entirely distinctive and Van Ness. It is not Mission, Grecian, or colonial, but it is all of them. It is as new and distinctive as the service stations that have sprung out of the automobile needs. If we dared, we would call it entirely American. And the printing that highlights each building is an achievement in modern art. Who but Americans would dream of using printing instead of gargoyles or classic medallions as ornamentation? Some of it is very beautiful, and almost none is ugly. The use of the word page, the printing of Buick, the H of Hupmobile, the Mercury A of Arnold are to me very beautiful. Van Ness Avenue. It is exactly like its name, a long, wide sweep for the regal motor car, the most wonderful and proudest automobile row in the world. The ghosts of the old, aristocratic, and residential before the fire Van Ness have seen to it that even commercialized it shall still be Van Ness. End chapter 30.
Chapter 31 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Nemo. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 31. The Blind Men and the Elephant. You live in San Francisco, and I live in San Francisco, and so does the man who owns the peanut wagon on the corner. And none of us live in the same San Francisco. Funny. We're like the blind men who each gave a different version of the elephant. To some, San Francisco is always 8 o'clock in the morning, or 6 o'clock at night, swinging on the straps homeward, swallow their dinners, and to a show in the evening. Such people never have wandered through Golden Gate Park of an afternoon, or sunned themselves on the benches of Union Square. They have never seen San Francisco by weekday sunlight. Then there are home women and leisure women, to whom San Francisco is always afternoon, downtown in the shopping districts, with ladies in pretty clothes passing each other on the street, or in and out of the sweet-scented stores. To some, San Francisco is always night. A taxi driver, who used to be a newsboy down on the old Barbary Coast, he has never seen anything but the night life of the city. Not bad, but night provincial. A sort of male version of Trilby. The neighborhood of Merchants' Exchange on California Street is San Francisco to hundreds of men. They ride out to the golf links and into the country on Sunday. Occasionally they go to New York, but when they return, San Francisco is limited to the neighborhood where men inquire anxiously, "Is she picking up any in the East?" No matter how wealthy, no matter how poor, to each of us San Francisco is very much limited in the confines of what each of us is interested in. It's funny when you stop to think about it, how the master of marionettes must laugh at us when he sees us together. Perhaps some night after the show, the traffic cop raises his imperial hand and there, waiting to pass, the taxi driver of the night, and a dear little home woman with her husband, and Mr. Chamber of Commerce, and close to him a man who has never seen San Francisco by weekday sunlight. There they all wait looking out of their eyes on San Francisco, and each seeing it so differently. San Francisco is one thing to you, and another thing to me, and something entirely different to the man on the peanut stand. End of chapter 31. Chapter 32 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Nemo. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 32. You're Getting Queer. Everyone ought to have. Well, what is it that everyone ought to have? No, not a machine, not necessarily a garden, and not even a camera. Everyone ought to have children. If not children of their own, then borrowed ones, or nieces or nephews or the neighbors' kids. Everyone ought to have children. People who have no children anywhere in the environment to whom they can talk intimately soon become queer and lopsided. They may not always realize it, but others will find them awkward and stilted, and covered with cobwebs and dust. Such people will be found hard to get on with and full of snippiness. It is half what ails folks that so many of them have no children in their lives, and it affects them like malnutrition. Let a baby enter a street car filled with moldy, musty grown-ups, and watch the starved looks and the foolish and pathetic boos and pokes they will dart in the direction of the child. It is often my privilege to tell stories to a group of babies, and one day, when they were crowded close around me, one of them exclaimed, "Hey, you spit right into my eye." Then it came to me what a lot of eyes I had probably spit into all down the years, and how no one had ever told me of it so frankly before. Children are so honest until we teach them to say that they're sorry when they're not, and to listen to stories that bore them, and to pretend not to like jazz, when all the time they do. Contact with children takes us back to the genesis of our being, and revives in us something primitive and honest and natural. I saw a man recently being led out of a grown-up meeting by the hand of a child, and he looked so cross about it, and was so obviously trying to maintain his dignity, while the child hurried him up the aisle. I thought, how silly. When a child has to leave a meeting, he has to. That's all. And there's no use in arguing or getting cross about it. And really how good it was for that pompous individual to get taken down a peg by the terribly human appeal of a little child. All of us ought to find some children to tell stories to for our own sakes. And then, when we have gotten Jack up the beanstalk and into the ogre's kitchen, and the ogre says in an awful voice, "I smell a human being," perhaps there will come to us some of the old thrill that we had forgotten. If you don't know any children intimately, children who call you George or Auntie Flo, children who run to meet you, children who hurt your pockets with anticipation, children to whom you read the funnies or whom you take to the movies, children for whom you may revive your childhood tricks of making a blade of grass squawk, or wiggling your scalp, or cutting out a row of dancing paper dolls, then hurry and get acquainted even if you are driven to pick them up. If you don't, then, as sure as you're alive, you'll find yourself growing queer. End of chapter 32.
Chapter 33 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Betty B. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 33. The Ferry and Real Boats. As a matter of fact, the ferry isn't a boat at all. It is more like a house or a streetcar or a park full of pretty benches. It doesn't sail. It only plies between two given points at stated intervals. And could anything be more dull? Nothing is more prosaic than a ferry, unless it be an ironing board. Even a barge is superior, and a barge doesn't pretend to be a boat. A boat goes somewhere, and it gets mussed up by the real salt sea, and so do flat old scows, honest and rough and sea-going. Any boat in the bay is superior to the effeminate ferry. Even the boat to Sacramento has a bit more atmosphere. As for tugboats, they are little, but oh my, as they pull the great impotent barges after them! Pilot boats have quite an air, making the big, dignified steamers look foolish, being yanked here and there. The tidy fishermen's motor boats look rather unimaginative, all tied in rows at Fisherman's Wharf, but they go somewhere, sometimes away down the coast, and from their sides the long nets reach away down into the sea itself. How the real boats in the bay must despise the ferry! Think of being called a boat and never once sailing out of the Golden Gate! How maddening it must be! If the ferry had any spirit at all, some day it would just switch about and go chunking out to sea. Imagine then the concern of the staid commuters from Oakland and Alameda, to say nothing of the citizens of Berkeley and Marin County, to find themselves being borne away from their vegetable gardens and fresh eggs out to sea in a wooden boat. I suppose there are many people living right here in San Francisco who have never sailed away out of the Golden Gate, people who have been bound economically or by love or duty, and have had to ply like the ferry daily between two given points. But can there be a man who has seen tall-masted schooners and long-bodied ocean-going steamers pass in and out of the alluring Golden Gate, and has never longed to sail away to the enchanted South Seas or to Alaska? Such a man is not a man any more than the ferry is a boat. If I could choose the boat I'd sail away upon, it would not be a coastwise steamer, nor the prim Alaska packers, nor even the steamers to the Orient. I'd choose me a four-masted schooner, carrying freight and going somewhere, anywhere, no one knows where, and then some day the wind would die, or some night the wind would howl, and there would come to me a great longing for a ferry that should take me home at night in a safe and prosaic manner. End of chapter 33.
Chapter 34 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Eva Davis. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 34. A Whiff of Acacia. In Connecticut now, and in Illinois, and in Utah too, it is lilac time. Lilac time. I'll stop, if you please, to say the words over lovingly. In San Francisco now, the lilacs are in bloom, but it is not lilac time. In Golden Gate Park, the rhododendrons are blossomed into gorgeous mounds of color, but they are not an event in San Francisco, only an incident. In the trail of the lonesome pine, set in the mountains of Virginia, they are the dominant background. Poppies and lupine and many others are in the flower tradition of California, but they are not what I mean here. It is an impression of mine that San Francisco, more than any other city, has taken the traditional plants and flowers of other sections and made them into a composite that makes up the plant atmosphere of this city. Take roses and geraniums and callas, none of which are epical, because they are always at hand. but with old Mrs. Deacon Rogers in Connecticut, who nursed her calla through the long winter that she might take it to church on Easter Sunday. The calla was history. Even the camellia San Franciscans take very philosophically. It has not, for instance, the supremacy that Dumas gives it in Camille. In Sacramento they feature it more, and an Easterner who saw them picking it in branches instead of single flowers exclaimed, "Why, they think they're oleanders." The plant and flower atmosphere of a community is very important. Some child is now growing up in the city, who some day will be far away, when there will come to him a whiff, perhaps of acacia, and in an instant there will come surging over him all the feel and urge and thrill and wistfulness and dreams of his childhood, and he will be once more in the atmosphere of San Francisco. It will not include winter and summer, but an all-round-the-yearness. It will not mean a flower, but flowers, cherry blossoms from Japan, acacia from Australia, and the best from everywhere, which altogether will mean to him San Francisco. The smell of the acacia, which he knew as the wattle, inspired Kipling to write these words: "Smells are surer than sounds or sights, to make your heartstrings crack." Perhaps many others see with me this difference between San Francisco and the rest of the country, as though nature here expresses herself in bounty more than in resurrection. Oh well, whether it be lilac time or all the time, to each locality there is its own beauty, and as for me, I have yet to find, in all my travels, the place that God forgot. End of chapter 34.
Chapter 35 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by S.K. Edison, New Jersey. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 35. It Takes All Sorts. "Hey, hey!" called the tall, nervous man with the fat little wife, waving his arms at the conductor for fear he would be carried past his corner. "It takes all sorts of people to make a world," remarked the sensible-looking woman beside me. It is not the first time that I have been impressed with the philosophy of those words. Who said them first, I wonder? It takes all sorts of people to make a world. That is, if we only had one sort, or even a number of sorts, we would have no world. To make a world, there must be all sorts, including the funniest folks we ever knew. I looked from the sensible woman with her well-chosen clothes to the woman across the way. The second woman was a sort of dressed-up and no-place-to-go type, with a squirt of cashmere bouquet in the center of her handkerchief. And nothing on that went with anything else she had on. And a hat which one knew was a hat because it was on her head, otherwise it might have passed for almost anything. The woman beside me wouldn't have been caught dead looking like the second woman, yet she should have been thankful for her, for it is only by contrast that the well-groomed look smart and the overdressed look fussy. Whether that is Einstein's theory of relativity or not, I don't know. I only know that it takes all sorts of people to make a world. There we sit on parade in these side-seater cars, and what we are is revealed so pitilessly to all who sit across from us. It's as though fate were making jokes of us and sits us down beside the antitheses of ourselves. Such a one of nature's jokes I saw recently. There were two men. The first was a sort whom one calls an old boy, a racy individual, well-fed with a round front, an elk, of course, a city man, reeking of good cigars, and an appraising eye out for a good-looking woman. Beside him sat a man who had been studying birds in the park. Berkeley was written all over him, the thin, pure type. He was dressed in field glasses and a bag full of green weeds and stout walking boots. There was an ecstatic glint in his eye which meant that he had discovered a long-billed, yellow-tailed Peruvian flycatcher, very rare in these parts. So there they sat, packed in so close and so terribly far apart, both so necessary to the making of a world. And as they sat, a boy entered the car with a shoe-box full of holes, and out of the holes came a peep, and then another. And the Berkeley man lost his abstracted look, and the man about town laid down his paper, and pretty soon the boy lifted the lid a bit, and both men peeked in. End of chapter 35.
Chapter 36 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Larry Wilson. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 36. The Fog in San Francisco. Sunsets in the desert, spring in New England, black-green oaks lying on tawny hills in Marin County, fields of cotton on red soil in Georgia, surf on the rocks of Maine, moonlight on Mobile Bay, and the way the fog comes upon San Francisco on summer afternoons. Sometimes when all its hills lie sparkling in the sunshine, and children play on the sidewalks, young fellows whistle, business autos go zippity-ip around the corners, and the whole city is out of doors or hanging out of the windows, then suddenly in great billows the fog comes rolling through the Golden Gate, and between the hills right up the streets into the city. Then immediately all is changed, and everything is nearer and more intimate, and nothing of the city is left but the street you're on. Then you hurry home for supper, and home seems good, and sometimes you even light a little fire in the grate. Still, it is not a cold fog, it is not a wet fog, it is never an unkind fog. It comes swiftly, but very gently, and lays its cool, dainty hand on your face lovingly. Hands are so different, sticky or wet or clammy or hot, but the hand of the San Francisco fog is the hand of a kind nurse on a tired head. The rain is a beautiful thing, too, but the fog has another significance. It is the small rain that Moses spoke of. My doctrine shall drop as the rain, my speech shall distill as the dew, as the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass. It is very beautiful, too. My, but I've seen fogs that were ugly, and heard the fishermen say, "She's purty thick tonight." San Francisco fog is not like that, but like great billows of a bride's veil. Then in the morning when the sun comes, it chases the bride in her veil out so fast, and they go out to sea together, sunshine and fog. The other morning I wakened very early, and there in the square of my window was a hard black cube against a white background. I lay there and blinked and wondered where that telephone pole had come from, which, like Jack's beanstalk, had grown there overnight. Then I saw that the fog had shut out the whole world and brought that pole close, and made it seem big and formidable and ugly. The fog makes some people lose their perspective, and for others it only wraps with a great kindness the whole world and blots out all ugliness. But upon everyone, upon the just and unjust, this San Francisco fog lays its gentle hand lovingly and with an ineffable kindness. End of chapter 36. This recording is in the public domain.
Chapter 37 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 37. A Block on Ashbury Heights. Sometimes in the afternoons, when the mothers are out shopping and the youngsters have not yet returned from school, our block looks so deserted and windswept and dull. The houses are so much alike. They all sit there in a row with their poker faces like close-mouthed Yankees refusing to divulge any secrets. But from the bow windows where I sit and type, In spite of their silence, the house fronts have become individualized into so many human stories. I never stop to look out, but somehow the stories get in through the window. For instance, I would not be so rude as to stare at the family washing which once a week is hung on the flat top of a neighbor's garage, but those clothes up there have a way of flapping in the wind so conspicuously that I cannot help see. There is the man of the house, and his, shall I say, garments, kick themselves about like some staid old deacon, having his fling. Then there is the middle-sized bear, whose bloomers, billowed by the wind, become a ridiculous fat woman cut off at the waist. And the little bear's starched clothes crack and snap while the revolving tree-horse whirls about like some mad dervish. I often wonder if the family know of the wild actions that take place on the roof. It is a very respectable block, inhabited mostly by grown-ups, except one lively house where a dog lives with some boys and their incidental parents. The door of that house continuously bangs, and other boys, with other dogs, are always hanging around whistling under the windows. Most of the windows are only used to admit light, except one that is used to look out of, and inhabited by an old lady who sits all day and knits for her grandchildren. It must not be so bad, I think, to look out of the window upon life instead of always rushing off to catch a car that takes one into the thick of it. Out of the window of my kitchenette, I can look into the window of a girl in the next house. Every morning I get my breakfast by her dressing. My coffee and I sit as she begins to unwind her curls from their steel cages. I have a suspicion that she also dresses by me. If she sniffs my coffee first, I imagine she hurries with her curls. She is usually fixing her eyebrows to my toast, and by the time I sit down she is doing her lips. After that, she goes off for the long day, and so do most of the people on the block. Then at night they all return, drawn by some tie of love or habit or despair, each to his right place in the long row of houses, which have been sitting there all day with their poker faces, waiting. End of chapter 37.
Chapter 38 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 38. The Greek Grocer. He had just opened up a store on our street, and in a lady bountiful spirit of helping him out, I went in to do a little trading. I told him I would like a can of baked beans. Baked beans, but he didn't seem to understand. So, pointing over the counter where they were in plain sight, I said with all my teeth and tongue, "Baked beans." He followed my finger. "Oh," he said, correcting me, "you mean pork and beans." That was the beginning, and for weeks that Greek had been correcting my pronunciation. There's no use to argue about it. The fellow has no reverence for Noah Webster, and besides, there are more Greeks nowadays than Yankees, and their way is probably getting to be the right way. Sometimes I think it is we who are the foreigners. Once it was cauliflower. Now, I say cauliflower exactly as it is spelled, but that isn't right. It is cauliflower, said staccato. And honey. One day I wanted honey, and after I had sung, "Honey, honey," in high C, and he didn't understand, I went around and picked out a jar of it. "Oh," he said reproachfully, "you mean honey." A Scotch woman had a scene with him the other day over some pepper. There is no way of spelling it as she said it. She kept repeating it, and he kept getting the wrong thing. No, she didn't want paper, but pepper. Seasoning for the table. Salt and pepper. The more excited she got, the more Scotch she got, and the more confused he. Then, when they were both fairly hysterical, I discovered that it was pepper. Then you should have heard that Greek scold. He told her that it was pipper, and she said back, pepper. Then they argued, and never once did either one of them get it pepper. Pepper, pipper, pepper, pipper. One day I heard him laying down the law to a woman who had dared question his price of roast beef. He told her what he had to pay for it in cash money, and asked her if she could do so, to explain. "Explain! You can explain! Explain!" But she couldn't explain. So, chastened, she meekly bought the roast beef at his price. Yesterday, a UC girl was in and asked, "You're a Greek, are you not?" "No," he answered. "Human Greek." End of chapter 38. Chapter 39 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 39. Billboards or Art? If you like billboards, you're not artistic. Take it or leave it. That's the criterion. It's not my verdict. Ask those who know, the literary clubs, the art clubs, and our distinguished guests from Europe. I can remember way back when Pierre Loti visited this country and was so shocked at the glaring billboards that marred the beauty of New York Harbor and blinded his continental eyes with their gaudy colors. Now, I would like to be both artistic and fond of billboards. I can't be both. So I choose billboards. Everyone who reads these words must make his choice. I not only enjoy them, I think they are beautiful. A lovely splash of color in the grayness of the city, a sincere expression of American life, so sincere that the critics who take their opinions from Europe never have been able to sneer us out of them. We must admit, those of us who admire billboards, that the critics had their justification in the early days. We have not forgotten the days when mortgaged farmers prostituted their barns by selling advertising rights to Hood's Sarsaparilla and Carter's Little Liver Pills and to Lydia Pinkham, and when Bull Durham marred every green meadow from Boston to Washington. Billboards were an unsavory addition to the landscape then. But the modern art of bill posting is quite a different thing, and in California it has reached its highest development. Segregated spots of color in the dun cities, surrounded by well-manicured lawns, supported by classic figures in white, and lighted by dainty top lights. And out along the boulevards, how lovely they are at night, luminous breaks along the dark highways, suggesting so tactfully the kind of tire to use, or the sort of mattress to lie upon. The critic has had his mission. He has forced the posterman. Fortunately, though, young America has not taken him seriously. If he had, this country would have missed some of its most distinctive contributions to art. The electric sign, for instance. That was condemned as vigorously as the billboard. And today, tell me, anybody, anywhere, what is more beautiful in all the world than the dancing lights of Market Street at night? In what a unique and vital way they express the life of the great modern city. And anything that expresses life, whether that life be medieval or the life of the machine age, that is art. There. How pleased everyone is to know that the pretty Palmolive girl who kept her girl complexion is married and has a sweet little daughter who has inherited her mother's skin. I don't always take the posters seriously. Now, I don't believe that man would walk a mile for a camel. He'd borrow one first. And contented cows. Cows are always contented. All I've known. But they may have had Bolshevikish notions recently, cud strikes, perhaps. Hence the accent on contented cows. To reassure us that there is no red propaganda in the milk. Then there is the parrot. What a long time it takes to teach him to say Ghirardelli. And that sentimental touch, if pipes could talk. They do. Sometimes, in an absent-minded way, I get them confused, movies and merchandise, and find myself wondering who's starring in Nucoa. Then there's that ecclesiastical-looking party, the patron of bromoquinine, whom I always take for some bearded movie star. But to return to their artistic merits, they are artistic. Take those same contented cows. What could be more futurist than the coal-black sky under which they contentedly graze? Or the henna hills so far away, or the purple grass they chew? Matisse and Picasso, great modernists, could not outdo those cows. The cigarette men are particularly interesting. A bit overdone. One cannot help wonder what enthusiasm they would have left for a gorgeous sunset, having spent so much on a cigarette. But I expect they are good men at heart and not so sensuous as they appear. There's that jolly old boy who hasn't had such a good smoke in 60 years. One wonders if his teeth are his own. They all have teeth. Everyone has teeth these days. It would be a change to see someone on a billboard with his mouth shut. End of chapter 39.
Chapter 40 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Betty B. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 40. Golden Gate Park. Enter slowly. By foot is much the better way, and join the long, loitering procession. Black-green foliage, the curious old green of trees that never wither and never resurrect. Something very foreign. Or is it San Francisco? Cubist effects of the horizontally lined cypress, vertical lines of the eucalyptus, and the soft down-dropping of the willow trees and pepper. Women on the benches, tatting, reading, resting. A retired Kansan widower passes, glances sidewise. Well, no harm in looking at a comely woman. Gossip of mothers over baby carriages. Only 9 months old? Mine is a year. Well, we think he's pretty fine. Comes the sightseeing bus. Blare of the megaphone. 17 miles of driveway. Boost, boast, greatest in the world. All day long the swings are swinging, rhythmic, slow to the touch of loving hands. Then at night when all is still and dark, they go on swinging, dream children, rhythmic, slow. Down the slide into the soft sand, Grandpa tending Nellie's children. Careful there. Ding, ding, like the sound of a temple bell, the whirling dizzy iron rings clang against their iron pole. Tramp of the patient little burros. Mother, I want another cone. Bum-ti-bum, two-to-two, ta-ta-ta, ta-ta-ta, the band. Wagner by request. Music lovers in the crowd. A symphony orchestra is very fine, but simple people like ourselves, we also love a band. I've never been to Japan, but this must be the way it looks. Tinkle of the wind bells, petals of cherry floating down. Sorry, but I've used the last of the films. Well, we'll come again. The bears, the big brown grizzlies. Leave them now. Out. What is this? Fairyland of flowers and fragrance, bears and orchids, wise planned contrast. People with accumulative minds wander through the museum. Very interesting. Just look at this mosaic, John. Exhibit of modern art in the gallery. Portrait of a girl. Only a daub to the wayfaring man. Lovers in secluded places stealing a kiss. Caught by the middle-aged. Silly young things. Wistfully. Once all parks were private grounds. Free now to the poorest serf. Well, there's something century gained. Some people say the world's growing worse all the time. Perhaps. Perhaps. Who cares? Lying flat on your back close to the smell of the earth, the great kind mother. Up, up at the sky. How deep, how blue. Is there a God? There must be something. Look at each perfect blade of grass. An airplane across the blue. There's something gained. Automobiles in stately procession, proud as horses ever were. Automobiles proudly rolling, swings swinging, people passing, and the swimming of all the waterfowls, the swans, the Japanese ducks, and the little mud hens. Infinitude of movement, infinitude of life, ineffable beauty. There must be a God. There must be something back of it all. End of chapter 40.
Chapter 41 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Eva Davis. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 41. Extra Fresh. Someone in San Francisco keeps hens. Not only hens, but a rooster. I distinctly heard him crow. It was in the very early morning, and like Tennyson's Queen of the May, lying broad awake, I did not hear the dog howl, mother, but I did hear this crow. It is Ralph Waldo Trine, I think, who says that so long as there remaineth in it the crow of a cock or the lay of a hen, a city is not a city. But I would not base the citifiedness of a city upon the mere crow of a cock any more than on the census. It is a vulgar criterion. For human nature is human nature, and nothing betrays human nature like hens. It is not surprising, therefore, that some woman has sneaked into the city limits a mess of hens. Neither is it an aspersion on the police. Besides, this was to be about eggs. Has anyone noticed how eggs of late years are never just eggs, but classified? The hens seem to lay them classified. There are hen eggs and pullet eggs, and large hen eggs and small hen eggs, and large pullet eggs and small pullet eggs, and strictly fresh eggs, and ranch eggs, and choice eggs, and large dark eggs, and all mixed eggs, and fresh cracked eggs, and mixed color eggs, and small brown, and hundreds of subdivisions. The very latest I noticed were dirty eggs, 2 cents cheaper. I look next for small dirty eggs. Why should they sound so unrefined? More so, some way, than small dirty boys. But an artist must paint life as he sees it, and I saw these dirty eggs on that bazaar, and bizarre of diversities, Fillmore Street. On Haight Street I saw extra fresh eggs, and how an egg can be more than fresh I fail to see. Now, a man may be extra fresh, but an egg is different. Even if it left the hen early, it would still be only fresh. Well, the grocer probably knows. Every adjective he uses has its significance. Take ranch eggs. How pastoral they sound, and fanned by fresh zephyrs. The same with yard eggs. Such an out in the open, let the rest of the world go by impression they confer. And so reassuring, too, as though they couldn't have been manufactured for Woolworths. There is much, I find, to be written about eggs. Isn't it up-looking, as Mr. Wilson would say, that they are so cheap now? I cannot help wondering if that woman's hens, the hens that went with the crow, if they laid well when eggs were so high. End of chapter 41.
Chapter 42 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by S.K. Edison, New Jersey. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 42 on the California streetcar. She was a little black girl, about 4 years old, riding with her mother on the observation seat of the California streetcar. She was a little black girl and didn't know the difference. She might have been as white as milk for all she knew. She was poor, but daintily dressed, beside being very neat. The rest of us in the car were grown up and white, well-dressed people who looked as though we knew a lot. We were all riding along, we and the little black girl with her mother, when suddenly we came out from the surrounding wall of apartment houses into the open, facing a side street. And there, before us, in all its morning glory, lay the great city of St. Francis. It was just emerging out of fog. The smoke and steam rising, touched into color by the sun, softened it into a great mystery, with forms and hulks coming into relief through the mists. For a moment it wasn't a city, but a magnificent singing of the morning. In a dull, inert way, I suppose all of us, the grown-up people, glimpsed some of its beauty. But we were all intent upon the business of the day. We didn't look out very far. But the little black girl, who didn't know any better, the little black girl raised her 2 arms above her head and exclaimed in a high, joyous child voice, "Gee whiz!" End of chapter 42.
Chapter 43 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Michael Fazio. Vignettes of San Francisco. Chapter 43. Western Yarns. The men around the corner store at home were forever telling stories about the big yarns that were told in the West. One of the favorites was that ancient one of the western town that was so healthy they had to kill a man to start a graveyard. Having been brought up on this tradition of western yarns, I have been surprised since living here never to have heard a single story that didn't sound perfectly reasonable. But it has dawned on me recently that the yarns are true. Therefore they are no longer yarns, but facts. Here is an oil boom story I heard firsthand the other day. I believe it, but you couldn't get those men around the corner store to believe it. It was in a dusty town where everyone rushed in to make quick money and never mind about the main street even if they did have to plow through dust to their knees. Then one day a heavy rain came that made the street one slough of a soft oozy clay which no one could cross. Then enters the hero. Even while they stood dismayed, gazing at each other across the clay, he appeared with a mud sled and took them all across for 50 cents a passenger and $1 if you had a bundle. Now, I believe it. Didn't I see the man who had been there and paid his 4 bits to cross? Imagine, if you can, though, trying to make those Yankees around the corner store believe that there was a town where one had to pay 50 cents to cross a narrow country road in a mud sled. I believed a man who told me a story down in Kern County last summer. We were riding over the desert, and I asked the stage driver the name of a low yellow bush that grows down there. He was an interesting fellow, that stage driver, who had been a buckaroo all his life and apparently knew all about the sagebrush country. And when he didn't know, he was not lacking in an answer. I like a man like that. Answer, I say, whether you know or not. He said with great assurance that the little low yellow bush was Mexican saddle blanket or tinder bush. This last because it burns like tinder in the fall of the year. Why, that bush is so dry, he said, that once when I lighted it to cook my bacon for breakfast, it traveled so fast that by the time my bacon was cooked, I was 5 miles from camp. I laughed. I couldn't help it when I imagined that 6-footer traveling across the desert with a frying pan over that low bush. I laughed because it was so real to me, but he misunderstood and said so, sort of hurt. Don't you believe me? And I told him I did. And I did. And I do. 5 miles isn't a great distance to travel over the desert after one's bacon. End of chapter 43.
Chapter 44 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Eva Davis. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 44. Mr. Mazzini and Dante. Mr. Mazzini will never be rich. He takes too much time for philosophy and gossiping with the women, and he loves a joke too well, and his heart is too kind. He is a universal type, as old as the world is old. Theocritus knew him well. "You pick me out some good cantaloupes," I said, with deadly tact, and Mr. Mazzini answered that it couldn't be done, and that melons were like men, that there was no sure way of picking them out for their kindness of heart. Then he took time over the melons to tell me how his mother in Italy, who was evidently something of a matchmaker, had gotten fooled on a young man who was both lazy and stingy in his youth, but who made a very good husband. One day it was figs, and I was strong for the nice-appearing ones. But Mr. Mazzini told me a lot about figs, and chose me some that were lopsided from packing. What delicious figs they were, all stored with sunshine and sweetness and flavour, just as he had told me. Mr. Mazzini owns his own store, and yet when he throws in a few extra, as he always does, because they are soft or a little specked, he will wink and glance slyly around just as though he were putting one over on the boss. One morning I saw him sweeping out his store, and he wore a woman's sweeping cap with the strings tied under his grizzly old chin. When I saw him, I just stood and laughed aloud, and he asked me why not, and said that a sweeping cap was just as good for a man as for a woman. And then he stopped his sweeping and gave me quite a male feminist talk. And he has a horse, Mr. Mazzini has, a fat old plug that peeks around his blinders as humorously as his master. Oh, I could just keep on talking about Mr. Mazzini for pages, but I started to speak of Dante. I like the Italians, and I like the Latin Quarter where they live. I like it better than Ashbury Heights, for instance. I like the way the Italians use their windows to look out of and to lean out of, and I like the way they have socialized the sidewalk. It's all a matter of taste, and I wouldn't criticize the people of Ashbury Heights simply because they use their well-curtained windows only to admit the light, and do not lean out and gossip with their neighbors and yell to their children, "Marie, Marie," nor sit out on their steps in the evening and play Rigoletto on the accordion. It's all a matter of taste. 600 years ago, Dante was an Italian, but he is much more than that today. After 6 centuries, Dante belongs to those and only those who can read him with appreciation and pleasure. Our scavenger is an Italian, and he reads Dante just as so many of the Anglo-Saxon proletariat read Shakespeare. So Dante belongs to this garbage man, not because he is Italian, but because he sincerely loves the Divina Commedia. A waiter in Il Trovatore, a rarely honest man, acknowledged to me that he could not read Dante, and that every time he tried he got mad and threw the book away. Dante belongs to the literary elect of all nations. Dante belongs to the great Internationale of the Immortals. Dante belongs to eternity, and for that matter, so does Mr. Mazzini. End of chapter 44.
Chapter 45 of Vignettes of San Francisco. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Larry Wilson. Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey. Chapter 45 on the Nob of Nob Hill. On the very Nob of Nob Hill there is the ruin of a mansion which was the Whitehall home. In ruins it still is a mansion. In ruins it is grander than any place around because it belonged to the grand days. There is an enclosed garden in the rear after the fashion of old Spanish gardens in Monterey, and between the boards that cover a door in the high wall one may peek and catch a glimpse of hollyhocks in a row and roses running wild, trellises of green lattice and ghosts of beautiful ladies having afternoon tea. To one side of the mansion there is a formal garden that hugs up close to the ivy-covered walls of the house. It is such a garden as one sees in elaborately illustrated copies of Mother Goose, with silver bells and cockle shells. It's so beautiful that it doesn't seem real. California gardens are like that, and to those of us from bleak countries they look like pictures out of books. There is this well-groomed garden of the living present hugging up close to the ruins of yesterday, and then, if you please, Mother Nature, with her penchant for whimsy, has grown right up against these two a riot of purple and gold lupin, a product of her own unaided husbandry. I am not much on allegory nor sermonizing, but I declare San Francisco gets me started. And when walking along about one's business, one sees such a vivid picture, the allegory forces itself. The grandeur of yesterday, the serious beauty of today, and then the wildflowers that covered the hills before man interfered will live on after man has gone into dust to make new flowers. Such a contemplation would make some people blue, but it gives me a feeling of something basic and secure and eternal in all this strange puzzle of life. It was a beautiful day up there on the tiptoe of Nob Hill. What a beautiful view they must have had from the mansion windows! The same sky and the same banks of heavy soft white clouds. And Job, that mysterious man of the Bible, must have looked up at just such a sky when those stern questions came to him. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. Dost thou know the balancing of the clouds, the wondrous works of him that is perfect in knowledge? Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong and as molten looking glass? The Nob of Nob Hill, how close it is to the sky! The Leighton Press, San Francisco, California. End of chapter 45. End of Vignettes of San Francisco by Almira Bailey.